Israel. Welcome to part 2 of our tutorial on turban wrapping. This is your brother, Chief Zebulon Ben Lewi Hedeqyah. And we covered in the previous tutorial about the importance of that initial wrap, the first cycle that you go. Because remember we said, each cycle is composed of 2 revolutions. I don't know if I emphasized that in the previous one. I believe I did, but if not, each cycle of wrap is composed of 2 revolutions. So 1, 2, and then you go to the next cycle. 1, 2, next cycle. 1, 2, so on and so forth. So, like we covered in the previous tutorial, the importance of that initial cycle cannot be overstated. It is extremely important that you master that before you even go into anything pertaining to 2-color wraps, 3-color wraps, so on and so forth, because everything that you do is going to be dependent on how well you make that initial wrap. So if you're not comfortable with that initial wrap that we spoke about in the first tutorial, I would advise you to pause this or just stop it altogether and go back to that previous tutorial. Get that down pat to the point where you're comfortable, that every time you wrap it, you're comfortable with your work. Once you are comfortable with just doing random wraps, then you can move on to this one, because this tutorial is going to assume that you already have mastered the previous methodology and keeping everything tight. So in this tutorial, we're doing 2 colors, and in this, for this particular situation, we're going to be using black and white. Of course, obviously, the methodology that's being shared here, it allows for any colors you choose to use. I'm just for the sake of convenience, I'm using black and white. And the first thing that we want to do is, just like on the previous one, you want to make sure that you have everything lined up. But in this case, we have 2 colors, and one is going to sit over the other. In this case, because my white turban is slightly narrower than the black, I'm going to have the white on top. I normally don't put white over black, but in this case, that's what we're going to do. So when you put it together, when you lay it on top, you'll notice that there's going to be a little wedge of black showing. That is necessary, because that's going to start what I call the swirl process, to have those multicolored layers. So you want to have that sitting out. And it's the same process that we had from the previous tutorial. You want to have at least a cubit of material draped over your head, and you want to make sure that it is sitting diagonally. So as you can see, it's on the diagonal, but you're seeing the black, the little wedge of black sitting underneath the white but protruding out. And so you want to angle it like we spoke about in the previous one. Angle it, change the position of your hand, and swing it around. Now again, you want to make sure it's not about necessarily the neatness of your first wrap. You want to just make sure that it is positioned right, and that as you go around, that it is tight. Not tight to the point where you start getting a headache, but tight to the point where it is sitting nice and firmly against your head and your crown, so that when you come around for that second revolution, it can sit right on top of it and create a nice snug layer. And then you just hold it and you bring it around. So this is the initial layer. How it looks, all of this, the spacing is not really that important on that first cycle. But now when we're about to go into the second cycle, this is when you pay very close attention to how the colors are layered. So now as you bring it back around, like we spoke about in the previous tutorial, you want to make sure that since the white is, or at least in this case, that the white is on top of the black, you want to make sure that a decent amount of black is protruding. So you want to pull the white down so that you see you're establishing roughly equal spaces for your layers. So as you can see, black, white, black, white. And when you bring it around, you want to make sure that, number one, you want to cover this up. You don't want, real black showing on this side of it. But as you get to the middle of your head, you can start letting the black show underneath. Okay, so you can bring that around like so, letting it sit halfway in between the layer like we discussed prior. Hold it. Bring your material around. Sometimes it might get wrapped up around your feet. You just kind of snap it out. Hold it. Get your layer together. And now we're going to bring around for the second revolution. And we're going to do the same exact thing again. We're going to make sure that there's some sufficient black up there showing. And we want to make sure that it sits right on top of that previous layer. Like so. Now, one thing I want to just emphasize, we spoke about the point in between, the forehead or whatever. That is really specifically for the purpose of it being a guide. Some Israelites, you'll notice that they might bring the point this way, or they might bring the point that way. It's only for the purpose of symmetry, just to give you a guidance on what you're doing. So again, after you did your second revolution, we now move to the next cycle. And we bring it around. We separate that like we've done. We pull the black up and pull the white down so that we create that next layer of swirl. And then when we get on this side, we pull that up and we bring it around like so. We take it, smooth it out. And sometimes you got to be careful, because when you're bringing it around your head, sometimes this starts getting twisted up, and you don't want any twists in your layers, or you'll start looking jacked up. So you always got to be mindful of when you're bringing it back around your head. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. So here we are. We're about to go do the second revolution. And we want to, like I said, make sure that you pull the white down here so that there's a sufficient amount of black. And we do the same thing here. Let's bring it around. And I also mentioned in the previous tutorial about 2 revolutions per cycle. And again, that is also a guide. I usually stick to the 2 because it evens out the amount of thickness in your turban. But sometimes, depending on how long, because I said that your turban should be at least 15 cubits long, but it should be at least 15 cubits. It can be more. And if your turban is more than 15, then you may have the opportunity, and there might even be a necessity for you to do the occasional 3 revolutions in a cycle, just to kind of balance it out. Again, it's all a matter of, trial and error, just you doing it multiple times just to kind of get comfortable with the process. And eventually you kind of figure out what works for you. So here we are. We're going to go to the next cycle. And we're just kind of like straightening out here the material. See, this is what I mean by got to pay attention, because the thing will start folding up. And imagine if I would have twisted that or tied that into the layer, it would have looked insane. So, but that's why we have to be circumspect in all things, as the scripture says. Got to be circumspect. Pay attention to what we're doing. And so here we are on the next cycle, and we're doing the same thing. We're coming back down to that middle point that we spoke about, and we're just bringing it around like so. And we just loosen up our turbans so that they don't get tangled. Flatten them out in the back. Make sure that they're nice and layered on top of each other. No twists. And so we come back again for that second revolution. And again, it's all in the maneuvering, using your hands to maneuver the colors, making sure that the back color is above over here and that the back color is below on this side. Paying very close attention to our work. And after each second revolution, you just smooth it on out so that as you pull the back turban, as you're pulling it, everything is just smoothing itself out so that you don't look all crazy with some ruffled looking turban. We don't do that. We're going to rock this thing. We're going to rock it right. Follow what I'm saying? So, again, we do the process. Being that we already did that second revolution, we drop down again. Make sure that black strip is out. And then bringing it up, making sure the black strip is on the bottom. Pull this back. Smooth it out. And sometimes your layers will get away from you. The turban pieces, it'll get away from you. So you always got to pay attention when you're wrapping it towards the back, because that's where sometimes you'll lose it. And you don't want to lose it because it'll mess up the whole process. So now we're doing the second revolution. Making sure everything is sitting the way it's supposed to sit. And so as you can see, we are at the end of the black. So the black is not long enough to go around again. So what we're going to do is you're going to hold them together, and we're going to do like we did in the previous tutorial. You're going to find a nice little safe place to tuck it, which in this case is going to be like right here. And you're just going to grab this, poke it in, and just keep poking until it gets to the bottom of your turban towards your neck, and you just pull it out. You just pull it all the way out. Then you got the long tail there, and then you just kind of like use your hands to kind of position it. Sometimes your crown will come up, will rise up. You just got to kind of tuck it under there, under the turban. And then you got your swirl like so. And that's how we do it. And so the important thing again is when you have the two colors and you put the one color on top, the important thing is to have that little wedge of back color that sits out, that protrudes out from behind the primary color, which is the one in the front, because that's going to give you your layers. And you just keep the process going using usually 2 revolutions per cycle. So when you put it over your head initially, you go around 1, that's 1 revolution. Then you got 2 revolutions, that's 1 cycle. Then you start the next one. 1, 2, that's the second cycle. 1, 2, third cycle. 1, 2, fourth cycle. 1, 2, 5th cycle. Make sure it's pulled back nice and tight. You tuck it in the back. And you're ready to rock. You're ready to do it. And that's how we do it as Israelites. We get it in. Culture is very important, brothers and sisters. But in this particular case, especially the brothers, because I'm showing you how to wrap a male turban. There's sisters out there who do the, like I said, who do the female, the female wraps, whatever. I'll let those sisters handle that. But as far as the brothers, the culture of wearing head garments is very important. All of our garments is important, but these things are important. Number one, because there's, especially from the camps that I came out of, whether it be Camp Yakad, which is of the Beni Zakin family tree, Machane Yehuda, these type of camps. These, in these camps, it was also, the wearing of a turban was also a symbol of status, meaning that you went through the educational hierarchy. You studied, you've done this, you've done that, you've gone and you've continued to elevate in whatever it is, whatever particular camp you're a part of. You went up the ranks. If you're an ISUPK individual, you went, you got your shields. So whether you're a 4 shield, 5 shield, 12 shield general, whatever it is, there was hierarchy that you went up. And so when you were given your first turban, there's an understanding that you accomplished a certain elevation in your education, a certain elevation in your studies, a certain elevation in the process of community and how you've been a service to that community. So these things are important. In other cultures, they call it rites of passage. It's similar to circumcision. There's certain things that are done in the communities, in the camps, that is for the benefit to show each member that with higher elevation, there's certain elements and certain there's certain visual aids that lend to an understanding that you have evolved. So when you see someone with a turban, it's like, oh, okay, that brother, oh yeah, he's been in this walk for a while. Okay, he's probably a chief man, or he's probably a prince, or he's probably a priest, depending on the camp that you're at, or whatever the case. But the important thing is, whether it's a hierarchy issue, cultural, whatever it may be, in whatever respective camp or congregation that you're part of, the important thing is that we promote culture. Because as Israelites, we're constantly promoting the culture of other peoples. We wear baseball hats. And I'm not like, trying to disparage anybody who does, because I've worn baseball hats. I mean, I wear fisherman hats. I mean, we do these things, but we're promoting these foreign customs more than we are promoting our own customs. And we have to get back to that. We cannot be afraid. And I'm going to just address this. And I know this is not really a part of the tutorial, but just as an end note, there are a lot of Hebrews, a lot of Israelites that are out there, that are out here now, that they're afraid of expressing their culture. They're afraid to wear turbans. They're afraid of wearing their keppah. They're afraid of wearing their fringes, their tassels. They're afraid of wearing their beards. They're afraid of all of these things because we live in a society that we believe, oh, well, if I wear my turban or if I wear my fringes, it's gonna put me out there. It's gonna, make me visible, and people are gonna be. And it's like, well, first of all, you're black. You're always visible in this society. Trust me. Whether you have a turban on or not is not going to stop the cops from going upside your head if they want to. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of our people, they avoid wearing the cultural regalia quite simply because they don't want to be identified as a Hebrew. I'm not saying that they don't want to be Hebrews, because they are what they are. But when they're out and about, they don't want the attention of, hey, what is he? What manner of person is he? Is he Muslim, or is he this or that, whatever the case? But this is what really makes it, it brings us to, the forefront. It brings us to that line, to the brink of where do you stand with your culture? Are you ashamed of your culture? And many of us, I think, are ashamed. I think not shamed as if we think there's something wrong with it, but we're ashamed because we've become so Americanized that we want to blend in so much with this culture that we will do anything to remove any vestige of being a Hebrew. One of my teachers once said that when you go out and about, and us being, and if you believe in those who believe in the New Testament, whatever, they can bear witness to this as well. In the book of Matthew, that you are a light to the world. When we go out and about, people are not supposed to think you are one of them. And I mean visually. I'm not saying that you're not part of the people, but when people see you, they are supposed to immediately think, what manner of man is this? What manner of woman is this? What do they deal with? What do they deal like? What do they deal with? What's their belief in whatever? They're supposed to immediately know that you are not the average person walking around. And I'm going to give a quick example of that. When I was still living in New York City, Brooklyn, I was doing, they were just building an IKEA out in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. And while they were in the process of building it and getting it up and running, that was when I used to do security or whatever. So, me and some people, we used to, secure the area, the construction sites or whatever, and do what we do. Now, once it was finished and everything like that, and we started to do security inside the building now instead of just out on the perimeter. Now we're inside, and it just so happened that one day, I came down there to pick up my paycheck. At that time they hadn't developed direct deposit with this particular company, so you actually had to get the physical checks. So I go down there to go pick up my check, but I'm not dressed in my security uniform, whatever like that. I'm dressed like how I always dress. If I'm not working, if I'm not at some secular job working, anybody that knows me, I'm garbed down all the time. Turbans all the time. It's wherever I go. Complete garb down. Fringes, tassels, everything. And I go to the IKEA, I go there, go get my check from the company that I worked for. And it was me and I think two other brothers, Israelite brothers who was working the same job with me. We got our checks and we're like, well, you know what? Let's go inside, because they have like this little a eatery inside of the IKEA for the employees or whatever the case. So we go into the eatery, has salads and stuff like that. So I got something, they got something, or whatever the case. And one of the brothers that was with me, I was already telling him about the importance of the garments and why we should, represent our culture every opportunity we can. And, and he was kind of wrestling with it over time. But this particular opportunity, he got a chance to see what I meant by that. So we go and we go pick up the stuff from the, I think the salad bar or whatever. We get our stuff and we go online to go pay for it. We go up to the register to go have, pay for it or whatever. And there was a sister there, pretty sister, dark skin, whatever. She's, looking kind of out of place considering that most of the cashiers or whatever like that, they're white or whatever like that. So, when you're in a place where there's a lot of white people, the dark people tend to, we tend to stick together. It's like, okay, whatever. So when she saw us and she was like, oh, hey, I didn't even recognize you without your uniform, whatever like that. And we're like, hey, how you doing, sister, whatever the case. We just came to get this and we, get our checks, get some food, and we get up out of here. And she looks at me and says, excuse me, can I ask you a question? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Shoot, sister. She said, what are you? It's like, and I mean, at first I didn't know what to say until she came right back after that and said, no, no disrespect, but I know you're not Muslim. You don't seem to be Muslim. You seem to be more level-headed than them. and I guess she had some negative experience with them. I'm not sure, whatever. But she was like, you don't seem to be Muslim. She was like, I know you're not Christian. She was like, but she was like, there's something about you. What are you? And I happened to look at the brothers, and I winked at them like, watch this. And I told her, I said, well, I'm an Israelite, a Hebrew Israelite. She was like, oh, you mean like the brothers downtown, bro? I was like, well, yeah, those are Israelites too, but, we're not part of that particular organization. But yes, we're Israelites, whatever like that. And she was like, oh, she was like, well, she's like, I see you got the turban on. She was like, in the fringes, well, she didn't say fringes. She was like, the strings on your clothes. She was like, what is that about? I was like, well, do you read the Bible? And she said, yeah, every day. I said, oh, do you read the Old Testament of the Bible? She was like, well, no, because, we were told that that's not really for us. We're Christians, and Old Testament is, not really for us. And the beautiful thing about this is now we had an opportunity to educate this sister. She was about to get off duty in maybe like about 15 minutes. So she was like, well, listen, I'm about to get off duty. Can we speak after I was like, yeah, absolutely. We'll sit down. And we sat down at the tables and we waited for her. And I'm looking at the brother and he's looking at me. He was like, wow. I said, do you understand what just happened? I'm like, do you understand what just happened? If we were dressed the way that everybody else was dressed, if we were just dressed like we were working, we would have got our food, paid for it, and left, and she wouldn't have said anything other than, hey, how you doing? But here it is, I come fully garbed, and because of the way I'm dressed, she wants to know, what manner of man am I? What am I? And now, after she gets off duty, she goes, because she lives in the same area of Brooklyn that apparently she lived in the same area that we're going to. So we go take the trip with her. We go off, and we had an opportunity to go sit in the park. In our area, it was called a place called Tompkins Park. Back in the 70s, it was called Israelite Hebrew Square. It was called. That was the center place where Hebrew Israelites gathered in Brooklyn. But we had a chance to all sit down, and she's opened up her Bible, and we're showing her, and I'm like, showing her about the fringes, the tassels, and different things. And lo and behold, she's like, I've never heard the stuff that you're saying, but I see it. It's right there in the book. Long story short, this sister ended up coming into the covenant of the Most High. She gave up her Christianity. She gave up the idolatry. She gave up the ways that she was conducting herself. She gave up the smoking of cigarettes. She gave up all of these things, and she dedicated herself to the Most High and to her culture. The sister's on Facebook as we speak. I'm not going to put her on blast, but it's just showing, and what this was an opportunity that I showed the brother. I said, see, that is why the Most High gave us laws pertaining to the fringes, how we dress, the certain way we move as a people, because we are a light unto the nations. We are a light unto the people. So that when they see us, they are supposed to think, what manner of men are these? Or what manner of sisters are these? Because they are not like everybody else. What do they deal with? And that opens the door for them to be introduced to the covenant of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, to the covenant of Ahia. That is why the garments are important, because that is the first thing people see before you have a chance to open your mouth. They see you, how you are dressed, how you look. That is your first, that's the first opportunity for them to meet the Creator. And if you are not dressing the part, it's going to require that they take the time to have a conversation with you for them to even know what you're about. But if they don't, but if you don't look any different than the next person, what is going to be the motive? What's the motivation for them to stop and ask you about what you believe? Nothing about you says that you are different than her or anybody. But here you walk inside of a place and you got on a turban and you got on long garments, you got on fringes, tassels, you got earrings or whatever. You just look different. You got the beard, and they're like, they're not Muslim, but they are something. I don't know what it is. let me find out. This is how we become a light to the world. We're supposed to stand out. We're supposed to look different. We're supposed to represent a higher standard. And that higher standard is not going to be found in skinny jeans. It's not going to be found in baseball hats. It's not going to be found in all of these other secular things that we are wearing. There has to be some part of you that is representing culturally, so that when you go out and about, people can see you. They know that there is something different about you. And now you have an opportunity to open their minds, open their hearts to the Most High, and to lead them to a better standard of life. That is the importance of the garments. And in this case, in this tutorial, the turban is no different. Because again, before a person knows what is in your head, and before a person can hear what's coming out of your mouth, they see you. They see your garments. And something about you has to be able to distinguish you from everybody else. And that example that I showed the brother, that caused him to start dressing culturally every day and not just on the Shabbat. But that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to be a light to the world on the Sabbath. We're supposed to be a light into the world all the time. Every time, every day, they're supposed to be able to see something in you that is not like the rest. Now, I'm not saying that it's all about the culture. I mean, it's all about the garments. And no, I'm not saying that. Yes, it's about your doctrine. Yes, it's about your mannerisms. Yes, it's about these type of things. But before a person knows your doctrine, they know your clothing. This is the hallmark of you. This is the hallmark of what you are and what you will be going forward. Hallelujah. Shalom.